Hi. I'm a little late. So I've been gone for a little longer than I planned to be because I got hit with this phenomenon known as post-election depression and existential dread. So that's where I've been, just staring at the ceiling for days. And though I'm here to, I guess, offer some level of normalcy by doing a video on a movie, I did want to take the time to commiserate, but also to hopefully maybe offer some level of encouragement to my viewers. I feel like post-election, I've had a lot of conversations with people about the importance of community and education. And I think those are the two weapons, if you will, tools that we'll really have to lean on just in general, but especially for the next 4 years, because we're in good old-timey fascism. Like that type of fascism you thought wasn't even like a thing. No, I still knew, unfortunately, because we're here because Americans are stupid and selfish by design. And the ways to combat that is to be educated and communal. So I will take this opportunity to encourage people to get involved with your communities, organize, lean into your communities, both online, but especially in person. Be seen. That's more important than ever. Invest in organizations and communities that promote learning and reading and education and research, that invest in children's welfare, that help and advocate for the unhoused, that offer protection and education to LGBTQ folks, offer reproductive resources and education. Those are the targets for the next 4 years. If you didn't see that coming, there it is. But again, being active, being seen, being heard is its own act of resistance. So that's my little PSA for today, because otherwise, again, I would just be in a doom spiral like I was for 2 days. So anyway, yeah, that's my PSA. Hi, by the way. It's Kendall. If you're new around here, welcome. If you're not new around here, what is up, home skillet biscuit? And today, again, in an effort to provide some form of normalcy, I'm gonna talk about a movie. And a movie I've been wanting to talk about for months now. A good movie, because I could not talk about trash. I don't have the bandwidth. I'm about to lose my mind. So today we're going to talk about a movie that I've wanted to share with the unsuspecting masses for a while, and that it's weird, it's horrific, it's kind of It is The Substance. A jolt to the senses in a way that's completely different from, again, old-timey fascism. It's a movie that was recommended to me by my manager, and I told him I would give him a shout out. Hello, Cole. If you've been following my channel for a while here and there, I've talked about some film that he recommended for me over the years. Every single one of them, weird as like, he loves a weird movie. And I've done videos on some of the movies he's recommended to me. Barbarian, I love Talk to Me, Infinity Pool, weird as If that's anything to tell you a bit about his taste, there you go. And today is definitely a continuation of his little freak weirdo recommendations. He is a freak weirdo, but I love him dearly, truly. He led me into this film requesting that I look up nothing about it, that I go in as unsuspecting as possible. And I did just that in a very small movie theater. It was an onslaught, an assault to the senses, and I loved it. I loved it so much. I went the next day and it was in limited theater showings. I drove all the way to Royal Oak to watch it with a friend of mine who is equally as demented as me so that he can behold it as well. And again, an assault to the senses, and it was everything. It's a horror, which I think is a mild way to put it. But as much as it is horrifying and revolting and disgusting, it's also incredibly stylized, campy, and shamefully funny. It's a really expertly executed introspection about the self and how we feel about that, how we feel about ourselves in the present, and the idea of the possibilities of what we could be, this kind of like nebulous other us, future us who has achieved or become all these things that we want them to be, us to be. A duality. Is it seen as another person? Is it seen as me? So we're talking about that today, and I will warn you, we're talking full-on spoilers, baby. And this is definitely a movie that I think deserves your full and unmuddied attention if you are to watch it spoiler-free. If you think you can handle it, I will warn you, again, it's a lot to the senses. It's really gross. When I was describing it to my friend, the word that came to mind was unrelenting, especially in that like last quarter of the movie. Truly just, oi, just bow, 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 bow. What the So if you would like to be blessed with that experience, completely unsullied and unspoiled, I would recommend you watch it. I believe it's only streaming on Mubi. I think there's still some like limited showings in theaters, but I know that you can buy it. I'm pretty sure at this point because it's definitely streaming. So if you've been thinking about watching it and you think you can handle the vagueness of what I just said, I would watch it. If you think, oh, I'm a wimpy shrimpy, I'm a little bitch, and I can't watch it, then that's what I'm here for. To tell you all the up shit that happens in it, but in a way that's a little bit more digestible, like how I just talked about American politics. So with that, I'm gonna give you a chance to decide, are you ready to walk in to the substance? I'll give you a second to mull that over as we send it over to ad roll Kennie, because there's no way in this video is gonna stay monetized. Take it away, ad roll Kennie. Thank you. Hello everyone, this is Ad Roll Kennie, and today's video is sponsored by Parade, the intimates brand that celebrates you and your body. They are the maker of some really cute and really fun and really unique underwear and apparel that allows you to feel confident, express yourself, feel sexy, feel flirty, and comfortable. They have some of the cutest styles and patterns available for a variety of sizes, going from extra small to 5X. I really love a matching set from them. I got 2 more because I can't help it. I'm currently obsessed with the Flutter bralette and the Monet floral pattern. The bralette is so versatile and so comfortable. I can sleep in it, but also cute enough that I could wear it just as a top if I wanted to. I'm also obsessed with the bandana print. Who would have thought to mix turquoise and red and yellow and orange? It's just a weird color palette and I love it. I love bralettes from them. They're always super unique, their bralettes in particular. They have one pieces like bodysuits, lingerie bodysuits. They have corsets and stuff. Those are very cute. Their fabrics are stretchy yet supportive and very breathable. Also made from recycled materials to minimize waste. I feel like every time I wear something from Parade, I feel like this surge of confidence and surge of sexy. Makes you feel sexy, babe. Sexy, babe. And with Black Friday coming around the corner, they're more affordable than ever because it's their biggest sale of the year, where you can get 30% off site-wide starting November 21st. But if you are following my channel, for Biscuit Fam only, if you go down in the description box, you can get an extra 20% off. That's 50% off of everything site-wide, and you can access it early, as in today, the day that I'm uploading this. Use my code and link down in the doohickey in the bottom, the description box. Low-key, I'm gonna use the code myself. Can I say that? I'm gonna do it. What are they gonna do? Stop me from being this fresh, from being this fly? Big thanks again to Parade for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get on to the debauchery. The substance is a visceral, grotesque, hard to stomach, no pun intended, shot to the senses. It follows the story of Elizabeth Sparkle, an incredibly successful woman that finds herself spiraling when she's unceremoniously ushered out of her job because she's too old at 50 years old. She's like fired on her 50th birthday. But her world completely turns on its head when she is offered an opportunity to live half of her time as a younger, prettier, quote unquote, better version of herself 7 days at a time. And though the movie handles some topics that have definitely been touched on in many a movie before, women and aging, our relationship to aging as women, the world's relationship with us as we age. It's very easy to see this movie primarily as a commentary on beauty and youth, but there's something so visceral and grotesque about how it goes about it that it really highlights the way we feel about our bodies and the body and ourselves. It does this by creating this surrounding, almost ASMR-like squelching, just wonderfully awful sound design. It really creates that visceral, like pungent disgust that one can feel towards themselves and their own body by externalizing it, like externalizing those feelings and turning it into a literal battle with oneself. It's honestly a very interesting way to go about representing self-hatred, this amplification of certain traits that are deemed desirable by society versus the rejection and the stifling of the things that we feel are undesirable to the masses, but attacks the inevitability that those two things are dualistic. They are two sides of the same coin. It is two sides of oneself. The movie has this incredible performance from Demi Moore, as well as, I think her name is Margaret Qualley. I've seen her in so many movies. She's kind of like a Mia Goth figure. Usually now if I see her face in something, I'm like, oh, the movie might be halfway decent. She's always doing something fun. But yes, it's this like hyper sensual movie. And I don't mean in like the sexual way that people talk about it, though that is an aspect of the movie, but less so what I'm talking about. It, again, assaults the senses. You can hear the movie. You can feel the movie. You can kind of taste it. It makes you throw up in your throat a little bit. It's surreal and hyper stylized. Maybe some inspiration from like a Cronenberg or like a Kubrick. Just real off. Like, ugh, real queasy. And that queasiness is contrasted with a kind of pop art, technicolor kind of palette throughout the movie. It's over the top in so many ways and is not intended in any way to be realistic per se, obviously, as we get into the actual specifics, but it's delightfully absurd to the point that even in the most like wild moments, you do find yourself laughing, if not out of disgust, shock, and sometimes just because it's f***ing funny. But again, the word unrelenting is definitely what I would use, especially for that like that final finish, that like last 25 minutes. But yeah, it's this kind of garish, perverse exploration of self-hatred and acceptance in a way, arguably. And those two things are at odds when we conceptualize our relationship with our own body. How we see our bodies, how we treat our bodies, how we view its worthiness, how the world views its worthiness, how we may or may not reckon with the inevitability of aging. All of these things are explored in the movie's conception of the self. The movie tries to make sense, I think, of that conflict. And though arguably a type of acceptance is achieved at the end, it's certainly not without a price. Those are my like initial kind of vague musings about the movie, spoiler free. But now, without further ado, let's talk about it, baby. This is the motherfucking substance 2024. My favorite movie of this year, hands down. So the movie opens with a aerial shot of an egg, and we see the egg injected with a syringe with some mysterious compound that eventually results in the yolk of the egg splitting off and creating another yolk. This is the first, most obvious clue that there is something to be said within this movie about the concept of duality, the two existing within one, the old and the new coexisting. After that, we see another aerial shot, this time as construction workers make a new star on the Walk of Fame. This star is for our main character, Elizabeth Sparkle. Being that she's having a star made on the Walk of Fame, she seems to be pretty famous. In this world, she is this icon, reverenced by many a passerby. But as, you know, time goes on, we start to notice that the people that walk past it begin to notice it, recognize it, celebrate it less and less, until ultimately it's all but ignored. Eventually it starts to crack a bit, seemingly from negligence, perhaps. But this is ultimately to show our passage of time and used to symbolize the emerging cracks, so to speak, in Elizabeth as she grows older and older. But eventually, one passerby even drops his burger onto the star with a criminal amount of ketchup on it. That's disgusting. But again, it's a horror movie. It was like, ooh, feel it. We're gonna get bloody. But yes, this star is meant to symbolize the cracking away, the fading away of Elizabeth Sparkle's notoriety, career, relevance in the world of celebrity. Eventually, we do meet Miss Sparkle. She is an aerobics instructor, interestingly enough, like an 80s style aerobics instructor who does a television show called Sparkle Your Life. It seems to have been a long running show, very much so a part of the cultural zeitgeist. She has like a sign off where she kisses the camera. Within the filming building that she's in. There's a bunch of posters of her. Really shows that she's been a fixture of this company for years. She's an icon. Posters all over the place. Her at various ages throughout her career. But unfortunately, she has made the horrible mistake of living long enough to reach 50. As a woman, egad, go die. You're still breathing? No. Her age, much like all of us, is something that we can't escape in a way that would be pleasurable. And any anxieties that she may or may not have already had about turning 50 are confirmed when she ends up overhearing her boss insisting on the phone in the crudest way possible that bitch too old to be on TV. We don't want to see women in their 50s. Like, they literally should go in a cave and die. He doesn't say exactly that, but that's how he behaves. So after overhearing this, the boss takes her to a meal where he disgustingly eats shrimp, and it's foul. They zoom in on his mouth. He's chewing with his mouth open. He has so much like aioli or something, and he's ripping shrimp heads off. It's on the tablecloth. It's disgusting. And while he's eating shrimp in the most diabolical way possible, he's essentially telling her, you're too old to be seen by the masses. Like, you're 50. This is just like an inevitability that you should accept, that your career is over. Your career is over. It is to be noted that he doesn't seem to feel that way about his own career, being that I would argue he's around the same age, if not older, but his life is unburdened by that notion because, you know, he's still very much so able to cavort with the other old geezers who run the company. But of course, Elizabeth, your job primarily is to be beautiful in a way that's very limiting and uninterested in the humanity of women. And things start to change very quickly. Her posters get taken down and all seems to be lost until she ends up in a crazy car accident. Miraculously, she's fine. She doesn't have a single broken bone. She's fine, just really depressed that she's 50 and essentially being thrown away by the world at large. But before she can leave, the nurse that was alongside the doctor that looked her over, who's wearing hella BB cream, by the way, just like thick. I was like, oh my God. He goes up to her and begins to refer to her as a perfect candidate while palpating her spine. So he gives her a mysterious number to call, a flash drive, and a note saying that whatever he just gave her changed his life. The words on the flash drive say the substance, again with a phone number to call. She keeps it in her yellow coat, which I want that coat so bad. I have so many coats that are that shape, but I don't have a yellow one. Would I look like Carmen Sandiego? Yes. Or Inspector Gadget? Absolutely. But it's giving Big Bird, and I'm into it. She ends up running into a guy from high school who recognized her and immediately says how beautiful she is and how beautiful she's always been. He's a little weird, a little awkward, but nice overall, and seems to be pretty sincere. Kind of gross, but everyone is kind of gross in this movie, so it's like whatever. But he gives her his number and asks like for them to be able to go and get coffee or something at some point. Though she doesn't seem to be particularly interested. She's just like placating him. So once back home, she decides to look at the flash drive for the substance. The substance is an injection that brings forth a younger, better, more beautiful version of yourself, using your body, the original person's body, as the matrix. Everything comes from the original. Everything is part of the original. Everything is the original, but it is external from you. So what happens is you spend 1 week at a time in each of the bodies. 1 week as your original self, 1 week as the new self, and then you switch back, no exceptions, after 7 days each time. This allows you to live essentially 2 completely different lives. But if you respect the balance and the knowledge that the new version of you, the other self, is you as well, and that you are one, this is going to be great. Peachy keen. Wonderful. But Elizabeth thinks it's nonsense. It does sound pretty science fiction-y. So she throws it away in the garbage and she's like, what the f? I'm not gonna, whatever. She goes to a bar, drinks herself silly, seeing a woman much younger than her getting a bunch of male attention, and she's virtually ignored, which seems to be a thing that maybe wasn't always the case. She goes back home, having drunk too much, and vomits in the toilet. Her apartment, much like the building that she films in, or filmed in now that she's fired, forced to retire, just so many haunting reminders of what she once was. Her greatness, her beauty, her achievements, and seemingly being forced to give that up makes her very frustrated at herself, and particularly these pictures of herself when she were younger. It incites this sort of self-envy, so much so that she throws a snow globe at the photo of herself that exists within the living room. Frustrated enough by the state of things, she decides, hey, it, I'll give the substance a try. She calls the number on the flash drive, and a man whom we never meet and never see answers the phone. He gives her the address to pick up the substance, and it's a mad sketch alleyway hidden away so that no one would like accidentally fall upon it. And before she leaves out the next day, she sees an advertisement in the paper where the studio that she films at is looking for, quote, the next Elizabeth Sparkle. They're looking for a replacement already. So off she goes to the sketchy alleyway in her yellow coat, and this is where she finds a wall of lockers, each with corresponding numbers that match to a key card that she received in her welcome package for the substance. There she opens her locker for 503, and that is where the chaos begins. The rules are rather simple. Yeah, you activate once, you stabilize every day, and you switch every 7 days with no exception. During each state, whichever version of you is unconscious, you feed it intravenously with this like liquid food thing, and that is for exactly 7 days as well. So it's timed. You can only spend so much time in the better state. You can see a problem's gonna happen, don't you? There's gonna be an issue. Spoiler, she's gonna fuck up the balance. She goes into the bathroom naked, judging her body one last time. Her body is just a body. It's very normal, but you can tell that she sees it as something inadequate, something maybe unfamiliar now that she's older. That's her final push to try the substance. So she takes out the activator, which is alarmingly neon green vial, and injects it into her arm. And after she does so, it takes a moment. She's like, oh, this shit isn't working. But before you know it, she is feeling it. She is woozy. She is in immense pain, seeming to come from her abdomen. And it's so painful that it leads her to fall face first on the bathroom floor, writhing in pain, naked, until eventually the second yolk begins to separate. She grows a second pupil and eventually a second eye within her eyes. And then her spine splits down the middle, breaking open, revealing a second body within her, emerging from her spinal column. You know, there's two eyeballs in one eyelid fighting for dominance. And as you can imagine, it's not particularly comfortable. It's excruciating pain as essentially her consciousness travels out of herself and emerges within this new being that has been birthed from her. We see what the new being sees. We hear what it hears. Sounds like we're underwater. Your ears are stuffed. Side note, today I had to get my ears irrigated. That is one of the most humbling experiences, thinking that you have a sinus infection and it's just because you got so much earwax that you cannot hear. She let me see it though. It was gross, but it fascinated me. It tickled my pickle. I'm not gonna. But anyway, she stands up, sees Elizabeth on the floor, unconscious, with a gaping wound out of her back, and then she turns to the mirror and sees herself. And boy, does she like what she sees. This movie has a lot of ass shots. I don't know if that's supposed to be particularly symbolic of it. Like, there's so much to be said about the body itself, but particularly the ass, I don't know. She has a nice butt. I'd be happy with my booty meat looking like that, you know. But there's a lot of focus, like hyper zoomed in. Like crazy zoomed in to her booty cheeks on a regular basis. Anyway, so this is the other self. This is Sue.
I'm Sue. Sue, 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 Sue.
Sue, 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 Sue. Anyway, Sue sees Elizabeth's body on the floor, revolted, but she does do her a solid and sews her back up, which is nice, considerate of her. Considering in 7 days, you will have to go back into that body. You should treat it nice. You should treat all of our bodies nice. I don't know. Yeah, I'd imagine things would be very inconvenient if she were to die from sheer blood loss. You know, so early in the experiment. But she sews her up, hooks her up to the food supply, and just leaves her on the bathroom floor for the next 7 days. With that said, she is shocked and confused as she contemplates her new state of being throughout the night. And by morning, she seems to have fully warmed up to this new body of hers, this new better, new younger, new bootyliciouser body. But as soon as she starts to find a rhythm, she starts to get this like tinnitus ringing in her ear that again we're subjected to, and she begins to notice that this is her warning that she needs to do her daily stabilizations. This is done by extracting spinal fluid from Elizabeth and using that once a day to keep that ringing at bay. If she doesn't do it, it's debilitating, this like incessant ringing, this like airplane pressure type feeling, and her nose will start to bleed. She kind of deteriorates from the inside. But once she gets that shot, her withdrawal symptoms, if you will, go away immediately, and she's off to live her best life as Sue. She decides to go audition for the new Elizabeth Sparkle position. The judges for the audition, both men notably, seem unimpressed with the women that come before Sue. But once Sue makes her way there, it's a done deal. She's accepted pretty much immediately and is introduced to the gross boss guy, shrimp guy, and immediately he sees her as dollars, as money. She's hired pretty much on the spot, but she does request that she's able to take every other week off. This he is fine with because that is part of what her appeal is, this youth, this seeming innocence that she possesses, gross. And her taking care of an ailing mother appeals to that purity that he's trying to use as a marketing tool while also hypersexualizing her. And just like that, Sue is on the move, baby. Photo shoots, dance rehearsals, fittings, and a brand new show by the name of Pump It Up. And just as that momentum is reached, it's been 7 days and it's time to turn back to Elizabeth. Aw. It's pretty clear immediately that if Sue is to be her better version, then Elizabeth by nature would be her worse version. Which, 50 or not, gorgeous woman, beautiful hair, like... she's mommy. Like, I don't know, whatever. So Elizabeth comes back to consciousness with, an invasive surgery wound going up her back. The switch is rather painful, as you'd imagine. So much of these first few hours back in her original body is her just debilitated by the pain. But once she's able to collect herself and move again, she makes her way to the studio where she was filming, where Gross Boss gives her her belongings and ushers her out of the building. You've been so great. Thank you for all you've done, but get the out, retire. That's the vibe. He gives her a parting gift saying that it will help her deal with some new free time, essentially. And they give her flowers that say how she was great, past tense, you were amazing, stuff like that. And so now, as her original self, Elizabeth just spends much of her time sitting on a recliner and watching TV. That's what she does as Elizabeth, as her original self, feeling possibly even worse now in comparison to who she could be on the substance. But just as that realization is becoming overwhelming, it's time to switch back, baby. She's kind of like counting down the days already. She gets her first refill order delivered to her, and now she's back to Sue again. It is notable that despite the guy on the helpline for the substance saying explicitly, you are one, you are the same person, you're just two parts of the same person, it's pretty clear that Sue already sees Elizabeth as other and lesser. She's kind of vaguely disgusted by the way that she seemingly spent her time as Elizabeth, just sitting on the couch watching TV. There's signs that she didn't really do much but that. Not to mention she just kind of left her body on the bathroom floor. But to mitigate that, I could see that being a problem, just leaving a body on the floor hooked up to IV sustenance. Sue decides to do a little home renovation, finding a hollow space behind her closet that is connected to the bathroom that allows her to make a secret door where she can keep the body for the 7 days that she's not using it. So she hides Elizabeth's body away, as well as removing the big photo of her from the living room, kind of making that a whole different, differentiated version of herself, out of sight, out of mind. And now it's time to pump it up, baby. Pump It Up is her aerobics show. It's virtually the same, just like a new gen version of Sparkle Your Life, the Elizabeth aerobics show. It's really flashy, really bright. It made my head hurt, but it's essentially the same like aerobic structure, but really zoomed in on everybody's ass. There's so much ass. I highly doubt I could show it. I don't know what I could show this movie in general, but probably not that. But it does end in a very similar way as Spark Your Life, with her blowing a kiss to the camera. Now that the show is out, Sue is looking to celebrate the release of the new show. She dresses up in this incredible, I'm just saying so much, but it is this. She dresses in a cat suit and some red bottom boots, baby. They were like either thigh highs or something. Like, Anyway, she says goodbye to Elizabeth, noting that her food supply is running dangerously low. But she's like, I'll be back later. Don't run out of food before I get back. By the time she returns, she comes with a boy. They making out. Presumably they met at whatever club she was at. But just as they're about to get like hot and heavy, the ringing returns and her nose begins to bleed. It's time to switch. Like, you have to now. You don't have a choice. You have to do it now. She's able to shakily tear herself away from the guy and rush to the bathroom to find Elizabeth. And though she's supposed to switch back, she's desperate to have just a little bit more time as Sue. So she decides to take a little bit more of the spinal fluid to stabilize her for a moment. She goes back to the living room with the dude and he's like, wow, you're like even more beautiful than you were like 5 seconds ago. What are you doing? Like, what's happening? But as he reaches for her back zipper, a deluge of organ meat of organs fall out of her zipper. I cannot show you that. It's gross, it's bloody, it's sudden. And it's also like a jump scare because immediately after that, Elizabeth awakens with a start. Now, there was no actual body parts that fell out of Sue, but this is the first of several situations in which the consciousness of Elizabeth and Sue seem to be intermingled. They're crossed wires to some degree. There's moments in which it's hard to know what is and what isn't reality, and what is and what isn't Sue, and what is and what isn't Elizabeth, if there is a distinction between the two at all. But when she does get to the living room, there's no body parts on the floor. The guy that came over left his number and the motorcycle helmet that he brought to her place because he was too drunk to drive it home. So he seems to have left out for a moment and would come back for it. When Elizabeth sees this paper with his number on it, that's when she notices that one of her fingers is really all of a sudden. Almost looks as though it has like some cell death, like a necrosis type thing where like it's dilapidating. So in a panic, she calls the helpline and she's like, hey, she used a few extra hours and my finger is how do I reverse it? To which he says, you can't. She blames Sue, notably calling it her, like she didn't respect the balance. She's the reason this happened. To which he corrects, there is no her, there is no she, they're both you. Respect the balance, bitch. So begrudgingly, Elizabeth cleans up after Sue's wild night while a billboard of Sue and her new show Pump It Up looms through her penthouse window, and that bitch mad. Another refill is delivered. She seems to be oddly unnerved while picking it up this time, so much so that she has to go to a nearby coffee shop to kind of calm her nerves. And this is where she runs into an old man who says something along the lines of, waiting that 7 days is really long, isn't it? He asks if she has started eating away at you yet. You start to feel more lonely. You have to constantly remind yourself that you matter. The original you matters and that it still deserves to exist. It's pretty clear that this man offering his warning is the BB cream nurse. Bitch, if you knew that there were side effects, you should have said something to me before you gave me the little boop-op, little doo-wop, dingy flash drive. Damn, bitch, you could have kept it. You didn't have to share your problem, bitch. Ooh. Anyway, she runs out of the cafe, runs into the guy that Sue slept with the night before. He obviously doesn't recognize her and treats her like a dick because she's a 50-year-old woman. You're not supposed to still be on Earth. But she does feel pretty raw and vulnerable, in need of validation at this point. And so she decides to give the guy a call, the one from high school that was like, you've always been so beautiful, you're still so beautiful. She decides to give him a call and arrange a date for them to get dinner or coffee or something. And he's so delighted by it that it really like perks her up a little bit. She gets ready, she puts on makeup and her clothes and a glove, notably to not show the finger. But she does have one final look at Sue before leaving out. And something about that seems to disorient her enough that she doesn't feel quite beautiful enough, worthy enough to leave. She puts on more makeup and she changes her scarf and she's like fidgeting with herself. She tries to leave again, but she can't because Sue is looming over her. Again, that billboard, they couldn't put that shit anywhere else. She gets more and more agitated, more and more frustrated, this kind of like obsessive compulsive type of reaction. She can't leave her house. She's so shaken that she can't leave as she is right now. She starts smearing makeup all over, wiping it off, pulling at her hair, and it's really sad. I'm getting a little teary-eyed. Again, visceral, to the point that she gets so just defeated that she never makes it to the date, never tells him that she's not making it. Feel bad for the guy. He's like texting her like, are you okay? Is everything all right? Did I do something? But she never responds. Instead, she stays home and eats her feelings. Been there, boo-boo. It's a dark day, but luckily she's back to Sue before you know it. And baby, she's pumping it up. She's doing her routine. She's pumping it up, shaking ass. She's feeling good. They're playing like super energetic, like poppy music. But while she is dancing, she ends up feeling like a mass grow, like pop up out of her booty cheek. She freaks out, but no one seems to have seen it. They're just like, did something strange happen? What went on? And she panics and leaves as all of these men have gathered around to look at this obscene, absurdly close up camera shot of her ass, like frame by frame. And she rushes out into the dressing room where she kind of massages the growth that appeared in her butt and pushes it up the side of her body through her stomach and to her belly button, where she takes her hand, goes into her belly button and pulls out a mass that you can't quite make out until she dislodges it from her belly button to reveal a baked chicken leg. Sue awakens with a start, which is where she discovers that Elizabeth had binge ate an entire rotisserie chicken and left its carcass in the living room. Gross. No shame for binge eating because it's an issue, but like you're gonna get flies. This disgusts Sue, leading her to call the substance guy, complaining that she isn't respecting the balance. This balance shit isn't working. She wastes 7 days just in front of the TV, stuffing her face, and leaves this disgusting mess all over the place. And he is there to remind her, again, there is no she, there is no her, it's you. Y'all are the same person. She don't want to hear all that. She gets to set only to find that no one's there to film Pump It Up. And she's very nervous. Like, is my show getting cut down? Like, what happened? But come to find out, she's actually been promoted. Her show is going to now be more visible, like more airtime. She's going to have more work. It's going to be more success, more liberties, more Sue. And consequently, less Elizabeth. She's even been scouted to host the station's biggest event, which is their New Year's Eve event, which will take place in a few months. So, being that there's a lot of stuff she has to get done because, you know, she has a lot to work on, she decides, what if I just don't turn back into Elizabeth? So, instead of switching the way you're supposed to, she decides to just keep siphoning off spinal fluid from Elizabeth, which, gross. It's gross anyway, because again, sound quality, you can kind of feel it in your back. But it gets progressively worse because the injection site that she always uses starts to get visibly infected. There's like a pustule on the back of her spine that's like getting more and more inflamed, and it's fucking disgusting. But after she does it, each time promising to, again, Elizabeth's unconscious body, I'll be right back. This is just one more time. I just have to do this work. I have to do this. I'm on the cover of this. I have a lot of work to do. Sorry. Eventually, she does make the switch. And as you can imagine, it's a bit of an effect on Elizabeth. She has lost most of her hair. What is left has turned gray. One of her legs has like atrophied and stiffened, and it has shriveled up much in the way in the one finger had. Her face drawn, pale. She looks very sick, not just old, like she looks unwell. And so she's like, what the substance hotline guy, the bitch, keeps not respecting the balance. She's stealing from me, taking things from me to feed herself. And so the man asks, well, would you like to stop? She asks if she stops, will she be able to reverse any of the things that had happened? He says no, but you can stop if you'd like to which she declines. She says she can't stop now. The balance just needs to be respected. And he tell her ass, so respected.
Balance just needs to be respected.
So respected.
And hangs up on her. That was funny. I was like, bitch. He said, bitch, don't come with me with your problems. But being that it is Elizabeth, she spends her time kind of lifeless on the television, just watching it day in and day out. Her one leg making it visibly difficult for her to walk. At one point, though, she does venture over to that gift they gave her when she was forced out of the company to find that they had given her a French cookbook that can occupy her time, considering, you know, you're retired now. You ain't gonna have shit else to do, ugly 50-year-old woman. And so she decides to cook everything from the book in one night while she angrily watches Sue, a pre-filmed broadcast in which she was interviewed about Pump It Up and about her recent success and like where she came from and all this like wonderful stuff about Sue. And Elizabeth ain't having it. She hates her. She hates everything about her. It doesn't help that Sue, they bring up Elizabeth and how she probably inspired her a bit, but Sue refers to her almost like an ancient relic of the past, something from her mother's era, all while Elizabeth cooks, stirs maniacally, leering, disgustingly removing gizzards from a turkey with her bare hands. Disgusting. I told you. Gross. Again, really squishy sounds. She's not having a great time. But eventually, Sue returns. And when she does, she's upset, baby. Because Elizabeth had completely destroyed the apartment, covered the windows with newspaper and eggs so that she couldn't see her billboard. And looking at how this Elizabeth person is disgusting and she leaves food all over the place and she's obviously old and unwell and has a binge eating disorder, she's like, I have a new resolve to never be that person again. So instead of ever switching back, I'm going to stockpile spinal fluid from her and just stay Sue for months. So that's what she does. For 3 months, all seems to be going well for Sue. It's nearly time for that New Year's Eve event. She has a miscellaneous boyfriend and she has Elizabeth's unconscious body living off of the food that was intended for her and the other self. So her and Sue, she just gives it all to Elizabeth in that cell she kind of locked her away in until one day Sue goes to get her stabilizing fluid only to find that Elizabeth is bone dry. She calls the helpline in a panic because her ears are ringing. She's having her withdrawal symptoms. And much to her dismay, the helpline simply tells her, you have to switch back. You need to switch back so that she can rejuvenate the fluid. That's why you have to switch back. So much to her dismay, she does it. And Elizabeth is not doing well. Her body is riddled with scars and like kind of rotting flesh. She even has like a mark on her body that was the same as the BB cream guy on his hands. She kind of has that all over her body. Virtually no hair at this point. Her back all fucked up, probably because she has no spinal lubrication anymore. It sounds like the bitch smoked 48 packs a day. Her knees don't work. Her titties are at her ankles. She has no eyebrows. She's 83% rib cage. She's not doing well. Her boyfriend hears a scream in the bathroom and goes to check on her. And that's where Elizabeth like tells him to get the fuck out. And once he's gone, having reached a rock bottom, she calls the helpline begging to stop. She somehow pulls that photo of herself that Sue had moved out of the living room. She pulls it back into its original place. Don't know what you got until it's gone, baby. And so the next day she goes to the delivery place to pick up her termination kit. The scene is really funny. She gets dressed up to hide all her body parts and somehow runs into the street to get the package. She comes back again, somehow pulls Sue's unconscious body. This scene is so funny. She did not have to pull her from that room, but it's just a great scene. She pulls her through the hallways into the living room and takes out the termination injection, which will be stabbed into Elizabeth to turn off the switch back and forth, right? But as she does that, at the last moment, she regrets it and fails to give her the entire termination serum. Elizabeth begins to panic, thinking, I can't let go of Sue. She's the only good parts of me. And she tries to do compressions on her chest. She's panicking. She's crying, feeling as though this version of her on the substance is the only lovable part of her. She then tries to initiate the switch, resulting in both of them being conscious at the same time. freaky. Sue, realizing that Elizabeth just tried to kill her, comes back with a vengeance. This scene was funny at first because it's just so strange. It's just so out of pocket. Sue runs after her ass like a feral cat. And again, it's funny at first, but eventually that tone shift and it gets very disturbing very quickly, you know, like much of the movie. There's so much resentment towards each other, and this boils over into Sue wanting to cause absolute destruction to Elizabeth. It's so visceral and enraging and deranged. This kind of like manic fight scene that you can just feel the self-hatred. So brutal. And again, highly doubt I'll be able to show much of that on YouTube, but when you see the scene, you'll know what I'm talking about. Sue is so lost in her brutalizing of Elizabeth that she doesn't realize they are one. And once she remembers that, she is disgusted and shocked to find that she had killed Elizabeth. But not too much time to worry about that. We got shit to do because we still got that New Year's Eve party to go to, right? Now, Sue rushes over, realizing that she has no way to stabilize herself anymore because Elizabeth is dead. So the ringing is happening and things are kind of wonky and it's like water in your ears and she's trying to ignore it, which is very, very difficult to do. The show grows closer and closer and there's all this like chaos of people getting ready and getting dressed and for all this excitement, but she can't ignore the signs that she needs to stabilize. She gets to the point that she starts coughing and her nose is bleeding and she runs to the bathroom, coughs, and something falls in the sink. It is her tooth. I've had this nightmare personally a million times, my teeth coming out. So nightmare fuel? Absolutely. What makes it even worse? Her teeth are so fragile in her gums that she's able to pick out 2 more with her bare hands. She is falling apart. Her body is literally degenerating. Before you know it, she's missing 3 front teeth, which simply would not do. But what if there were a way that she could create a better version of herself? She rushes through the hallways of the studio, running into the disgusting boss, and he is with the shareholders. It's very disconcerting, and they're staring at her like, aren't you so excited? Smile, demanding for her to smile. She does smile dutifully, but without showing her missing teeth. She continues to rush eventually to the elevator, pushing the button, but then there's a snap. Her entire fingernail falls off. And before she can make sense of that, her ear pops off. We, as the audience, are subjected to, again, that sound that just like, I'm missing an ear sound. A man comes into the elevator, doesn't even notice she's in distress, that she's literally falling apart. But eventually she's able to run through the streets back to her apartment, finds the smallest remnants of the original activator that is undoubtedly expired at this point, but whatever. And she injects the activator into herself, goes through the whole writhing in pain on the floor, the splitting of the consciousness. However, it results in cross wires, to say the least. The thing, you know, her back splits open. Something does come from her. A being that is a grotesque amalgamation of both Sue and Elizabeth, referred to as Monstro Elisa Sue. She is this blob monster of teeth and body parts in all the wrong places, can barely speak. I'd imagine the vocal cords aren't where they're supposed to be either. And notably, this monstrosity has Elizabeth's face on the back of it, just like mouth agape and like a soundless scream, like, and I don't know what it is about Elisa Sue, but it would seem that she was able to reach such a level of radical self-acceptance that she puts on that pretty princess dress. She sticks earrings vaguely where her ear, I guess, is supposed to be. She tries to curl what are left of her strands of hair and tapes a picture of Elizabeth, notably, over her face, dolling it up with some lipstick, prettying it up, if you will. And then she comes back on set, fantasizing of her old co-workers, adoring her, celebrating her, is seeming to have this like newfound inflated sense of self-importance. She makes her way to the New Year's show. Notably, nobody notices this. She's just an amalgamation of body parts. But before she goes out, it's this weird New Year's Year's Eve show where for some reason the dancers are topless. That's the weird thing about this movie. Okay. But like, it's supposed to be like a national broadcast on like TVPG television. Like there's a kid in the audience. It's very weird. But out comes Elisa Sue. They play that, oh God, I forget what it's called. Da, 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 da. When she comes out, a spotlight shining on top of her, she tries to start her speech. But one, she's unintelligible. And two, the Elizabeth mask paper thing falls off. The audience watches in shock and horror, too stunned to react. But before they can even really look at her, a thing starts coming out of her face, like bulging, like vaguely where her eye is supposed to be, or maybe where her nose is supposed to be. It is a titty. It's a titty that she kind of poops out of her face and falls to the ground. I'm sorry, I just said a lot at you. I'm so sorry. Give that a minute. This is a callback to when Sue was auditioning to be on Pump It Up, and one of the judges said to the woman that auditioned before her that she would have been better if she had a boob on her face where her nose was. If she didn't have that nose and she had her boobs on her face, she would have been way better. So it's a callback to that. But yeah, the boob comes out of her face, flops to the ground, and it is cinema, because there's a prolonged pregnant silence. And then
The monster!
I feel so much shame saying this. The first time I went to see this movie, I saw this scene. Every other person was like shocked and disgusted, and as was I. But when I tell you, I laughed so hard. I laughed harder than I had laughed in so long in a theater, dog. I had tears. I could not breathe. I was looking around, gasping, grasping for help. Anyone to help me. So the audience freaks out a little bit. Go to attack the monster. That is Elisa Sue. And she's like trying to plead with them, like, no, it's me, Elizabeth. Notably not calling herself Sue. She's reached this weird sense of self-acceptance. But they're pushing her to and fro. Eventually, somebody comes up and hits her with like a shovel and chops her head off, only for it to grow from the neck hole, I guess, where her neck would be, and regenerates something from that wound. And then her arm degenerates from where it was holding the microphone stand, breaks off, starts water hose spraying blood through the entire auditorium as chaotic metal music plays. People are screaming, falling over themselves, very chaotic Carrie-esque. Yeah, this deluge as she struggles to run out of the building, spraying the walls red with blood and running out to the street, falling and essentially combusting on the street, splattering into just a vague pile of parts. Within this mass comes Elizabeth. Not all of Elizabeth, just her face on like vaguely squishy, almost slug-like parts of the mass, and it starts to crawl much like a snail or maybe an octopus through the streets with Elizabeth's face on it, until eventually it stops on Elizabeth Sparkle's Walk of Fame, staring up at the sky, finally feeling the sense of worth that had always eluded her in her original self, I guess. And she smiles in a way that's a bit hard to explain. Maybe a sense of relief or a sense of joy. I don't know. But eventually the face melts on the star into an indescript puddle of goo, until the next morning a maintenance guy with a motor like scrubber mop wipes it away. And that is the substance. Yeah, when I said unrelenting, I meant it. I love this movie. If you can't, I think it's amazing. Like I was talking about earlier, there's so much with this movie in regards to how we are self-destructive to ourselves. I do believe that the substance can be allegorical to a lot of things. It could be literally a substance like a drug. It could be to body alteration, plastic surgery. It could be to disassociating, numbing the pain through her binge eating. It could be through depersonalizing, externalizing that self-hate, making it into another being only to find that that is not the case. It is but oneself. Self-hatred of the body and how we treat our bodies. Ultimately, that only when Elizabeth accepted the most ugly parts of herself did she feel free. I don't know. It just all culminates into this weirdly comforting story of acceptance, maybe. How beautiful. How tragic. Yeah. Absolute mind absolute disgusting. This is the movie I'm going to unleash onto unsuspecting masses. So whenever people come over to my house and say, I like horror movies, well, bitch, do I got something for you. I love this movie. It's so funny, so but also it gets you thinking. It makes us really ask ourselves what ways in which we attempt to create this better self, the ways in which we view ourselves as another person when indulging in those addictions. Loved it. 2 hours and 20 minutes. Don't feel like it. Again, especially that last like half an hour. When they start fighting onward, bitch. That's all for today, folks. If you like this video, feel free to like this video. Comment below if you've seen it. If this is the first you've heard of it, I want to know your thoughts. Yeah. So, okay, I'm gonna go decompress. Maybe watch something a little less squishy. And I'll see you guys next time. Bye. You want to say bye-bye? Ooh, you stink. You smell like dog. Say bye-bye.